Welcome back, everybody. We are diving deep today into the world of Al Pacino.
Al Pacino.
Using his own memoir as the source material.
Oh, wow. So we are...
Own words.
It's really fascinating to get his perspective this way without it being filtered through, somebody else writing his biography or,
Exactly.
a critic or something.
Yeah, it's Pacino.
Yeah.
And one thing that really jumped out to me was how his relationship with fame changed over the years.
When you think about it, his early success, especially with Godfather,
right?
He came from nothing, and then suddenly, he's launched into this level of fame that I don't think anybody can really be prepared for.
Right, and he even talks about how early on, I think it was around the time of Bobby Deerfield, that People magazine wanted to put him on the cover, and he turned them down.
Wow, yeah, I can't imagine an actor doing that today.
Right,
but
it's just like
it shows you just how different his mindset was at that time.
Yeah, he wasn't chasing the spotlight like you see a lot of actors do today.
Right.
But then years later, I think it was around The Godfather, Part 3, he's totally open to doing the People magazine cover. It's like, okay, I've accepted this is part of the game.
Right.
And get this, after all that, they actually canceled the cover story after the movie came out.
Oh.
What? You would think, with all the hype around The Godfather, they'd be begging for a cover with him on it.
You'd think so.
Yeah. And, it really just goes to show how fickle the public can be.
Oh, absolutely.
One minute you're on top, the next minute nobody's thinking about
Yesterday's news, Yeah,
and he even says, when Sea of Love came out, he didn't see that as a comeback.
Right.
Even though the media was framing it that way.
Interesting.
He was just like, I'm just going back to work.
Yeah, it shows you where his priorities are. It's about the work.
The craft.
Yeah.
Not the hype.
Not the hype. And that leads us to a really interesting phase in his career. Dick Tracy, Godfather III, Glengarry Glen Ross, and Scent of a Woman. I mean, talk about a turning point.
Yeah.
He's nominated for 2 Oscars the same year.
Right.
For Dick Tracy and Glengarry Glen Ross. And now the whole conversation is about how he hasn't won an Oscar yet.
Interesting how that shift happens.
Yeah.
The narrative changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of Dick Tracy, I loved this story about how Warren Beatty got him to play Big Boy Caprice.
Oh, yeah.
Because apparently he kind of tricked him into it.
Well, from the way Pacino describes it, it sounds like they had a really playful dynamic between them.
Yeah.
He says that Beatty was asking him for suggestions for who should play the part, knowing that he would never suggest himself.
Right.
But then, boom, he says, you know what, you should play Big Boy.
Right.
Which is classic Beatty. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that story. It's so funny. And even his description of his process for creating Big Boy is just hilarious.
Yeah, the physical transformation, the deliberate misquoting of history.
I love that.
I mean, he's clearly having fun with it, which is so important because here's this guy who's known for these really intense roles.
Right.
And he's embracing this larger-than-life, almost comedic villain.
Right. These shows
he's willing to play.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, to not take himself too seriously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, The Godfather, Part 3, that's a movie that has a bit of a mixed legacy.
Yeah.
And Pacino's pretty upfront about why they made it.
Money.
Yeah, pretty much. He basically admits it was about the money.
Yeah.
For him, for Coppola, and let's be honest, even legendary directors have bills to pay.
Yeah, I mean, come on, we can all relate to that.
Of course.
I mean, not on that scale, but we all got to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
Right. But the original ending that they had planned for that movie, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Michael dying on the steps of the church with Kay by his side. That's a full circle moment.
Yeah.
So powerful. But, the production was a bit of a nightmare.
Oh, tell me about it.
First, Robert Duvall doesn't come back.
Huge loss.
I know.
Yeah.
And then Winona Ryder has to drop out. So Sofia Coppola steps in.
Wow. Yeah, last-minute casting change there.
I know.
I mean, it just goes to show you how these things...
Behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, behind-the-scenes things can completely...
Change a movie.
Change a film, yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting to me because Pacino's interpretation of Michael's character arc in that film seemed very different from what the audience was expecting.
Yeah, I think the audience wanted more ruthless Godfather.
Right.
But the way Pacino saw it was that Michael was really trying to find redemption. Trying to break free from the family business.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
because, I mean, he's a broken man
Oh, absolutely.
at that point.
He's lost everything.
He's killed his brother.
His wife left him.
Yeah, his wife has left him.
Yeah, he's lost everything.
He's trying to find some peace. Right.
It's just interesting how an actor's interpretation can differ from what the audience expects.
Right, and it really leads to a lot of fascinating discussion about, what the meaning of the film is.
Exactly.
So, on to Glengarry, Glen Ross.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing cast in that one. And those words, David Mamet.
Oh, the dialogue.
So sharp.
Razor sharp.
It's amazing. And Pacino actually passed on doing the stage version of it.
Oh, he did?
Years before.
Wow.
But he jumped at the chance to do the movie.
It shows you how timing and perspective can really influence an actor's choices.
Yeah.
What an interesting insight.
Yeah, and I love what he says about Mamet's writing style.
Oh.
He talks about, the power of using just the right words.
So concise, yet every word is so loaded with meaning.
And he even talks about his son, Anton, who was really young at the time. But he was just blown away by how Mamet could say so much in so few words.
That's Mamet for you. It's not about flowery prose.
Right.
It's about hitting the audience with raw, unfiltered emotion.
And then Scent of a Woman.
Oh, yeah.
He really goes deep on his pre-performance rituals in that one.
Oh, interesting.
He talks about how, he would be outside the studio before they would start filming, and he'd be pacing and doing these almost involuntary movements, just trying to get in the right headspace.
I see, almost like an athlete with their superstitions, right?
Yeah.
Just trying to channel all that nervous energy into a focused performance.
And then there's the nickname that the director, Martin Brest, gave him, El Diablo Negro.
Which means?
The Black Devil.
Oh, the Black Devil.
Yes.
Wow, that's quite a nickname.
I know.
But it speaks to the intensity that he brought to that role.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade,
yes.
This is unlike anything we'd seen him do before.
Yeah, he's complex, he's troubled, he's even suicidal.
Right.
Pacino had to navigate all of those layers with such incredible nuance.
And, he really goes all in on preparation for this role. He's learning to tango, he's learning to disassemble a .45 blindfolded.
Wow.
And he even picks up the from this.
How did he pick that up?
Well, he worked with a military officer who was helping him prepare for the role. And that's where he picked that up.
Yeah.
And he even talks about how his daughter, Julie, when she was really little, actually taught him how to play blind.
Oh, how sweet is that?
I know he was talking about how she'd be under the table and she'd close her eyes and walk around, not pretending, but just experiencing the world differently.
Right.
And it was a real light bulb moment for him.
Wow.
Because he was like, I need to approach this the same way.
Not as a performance, but as a shift in perception.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful.
I know, and it's just so simple.
Yeah.
But it's a profound acting lesson coming from,
or toddler.
Little kid under the table.
And it really shows you the power of observation.
Yeah.
Being open to learning from the most unexpected sources.
Yeah, and it just seems like fatherhood really brought this whole new dimension to his life professionally and personally.
Yeah, that's a theme that keeps coming up in the memoir, this idea that life is constantly evolving and we're evolving with it.
Right.
It's not about holding on to one specific moment, but embracing the journey as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So now we come to, I think, a very crucial moment in Pacino's career. His journey toward winning an Oscar.
Right. He'd had 8 nominations by this point.
8 nominations.
8 nominations, but no wins.
And I can only imagine how much pressure that puts on a person.
Oh, immense pressure.
And it just begs the question, what role do awards actually play in an artist's career?
Right. Do they actually validate talent or do they just create more pressure?
More pressure, yeah. And it seems like Pacino was really wrestling with this.
Yeah.
And he actually decided to take the Oscars seriously this time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he even hired a publicist, which he had never done before.
It suggests a shift in his thinking, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he was finally ready to embrace the recognition, to really engage with the whole process.
Yeah, and he was still hesitant to do interviews.
Yeah, especially after that bad experience on that morning show for Scarface.
Yeah, he jokes about it in the book.
Yeah.
But you can tell it really affected him.
It left a mark.
Yeah, it left a mark.
It's a reminder that even someone as seasoned as Al Pacino can still be vulnerable to that kind of, public scrutiny.
Totally. And he does eventually agree to an interview with Barbara Walters.
Oh, interesting.
And He even pokes fun at himself about it.
Does he?
Yeah, he says that he warmed up to her because she was so good at putting him at ease.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, he says she's just really good at making you feel comfortable.
Right.
He seems to have a good sense of humor about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we get to the Oscars ceremony itself.
Right.
And he talks about how he just felt so out of place.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would feel that way.
Right.
In that setting.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden, all this success, but you still don't.
It doesn't erase those feelings of insecurity or whatever. Yeah, that's fascinating how success can still come with those feelings of discomfort.
Yeah, it reminds us that, fame and recognition don't erase all the insecurity.
Your baggage, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't magically disappear.
No, but then comes the moment, right? They announce his name, Best Actor for Sent to a Woman.
Oh, yeah.
And he says he just knew. It was different this time.
Wow.
Years of anticipation.
Yeah.
Finally culminating in this moment.
Yeah, and you can feel the genuine gratitude in his acceptance speech,
Oh, yeah.
He thanks his colleagues, his mentors. He even mentions his work with this community organization in the Bronx.
That was so cool. He just uses this platform to highlight this cause that's so important to him.
Yeah.
And then backstage, there's this really charming little anecdote.
No, tell me.
About him bumping into Barbra Streisand.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just imagine being a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Oh, yeah. Two icons just, just chatting it up.
But then, boom.
What?
It's back to reality.
Oh, no.
His producer, Marty Bregman, have booked him on a flight back to New York that night.
Oh, my goodness.
Because he's got to be on set for Carlito's Way the next morning.
No rest for the wicked.
I know.
Huh.
But here's where it gets really profound.
Okay.
He talks about this moment he has on the plane, alone with his Oscar.
Yeah.
And he compares it to this feeling he had when he was accepted into the actor's studio.
Wow. So two pivotal moments in his life, decades apart.
Yeah, and it's the same.
And they evoke a similar feeling.
Yeah. And he says it's this feeling of deep clarity and self-assurance. Like a confirmation that he's on the right path.
Yeah.
But then he says, and I quote, "Thankfully, it doesn't last too long."
Wait, why wouldn't he want that feeling to last?
I know. Like you've achieved this thing, this thing that you've been working toward your whole life.
Right. You'd think he'd want to savor it.
Yeah, but he goes on to compare it to the feeling that a hang glider must have when they finally touch down after soaring above it all. And it's like he's saying the journey, the striving is what really matters. The destination, while exhilarating, is ultimately fleeting.
That's a really thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
Maybe lasting fulfillment isn't about clinging to those peak moments, but about integrating the lessons you learned along the way into your life and your work.
Yeah, it really challenges our assumptions
It does.
about what success should feel like.
Absolutely. So the question for you, our listener, is this. Do you think satisfaction from achieving a long-sought goal has to fade? Or could it be something more lasting? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Let us know. So last time we left off with Pacino talking about this kind of bittersweet feeling of winning the Oscar.
Yeah.
Like, even that incredible feeling didn't last forever. And it got me thinking about, what happens after you achieve a goal
Right.
that you've been working towards your whole life?
Right. What comes next?
What comes next, and how do you deal with that?
It's a question that resonates with a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Especially in a culture that's so focused on achievement and, reaching the top of the mountain.
And it seems like Pacino's saying, maybe the real fulfillment is
in the journey.
Yeah, in the striving, in the process.
Yeah, and around this time, he gets really into Shakespeare, specifically Richard III.
Yeah, it's almost like he needed a creative counterbalance to the intensity of The Godfather, Part 3.
Right. It's fascinating how one creative project can spark a completely different one.
Yeah. And he talks about this real urge to explore Shakespeare.
Yeah.
To really understand the language, the characters. And he even starts developing this idea for a film about Richard III.
Oh, wow.
But not a straight adaptation.
Right.
He wants to bring in interviews with actors, scholars, just people on the street, get their take on Richard III.
Interesting.
It's almost like a documentary exploring the relevance of Shakespeare today.
That's ambitious.
Yeah. It really shows his passion for Shakespeare, but also his desire to kind of
Yeah.
demystify him,
To make him accessible to everyone.
Yeah, not just,
Yeah.
academics or
Right.
theater buffs.
Absolutely.
And even though the film never actually got made,
Oh, it did.
it never got made, but just the process of developing it
Mm-hmm.
seems to have really, really energized him.
Right. It gave him a new outlet.
Yeah.
New challenge.
Yeah, and maybe that's the key,
Yeah.
right? We think of reaching a goal as this end point. But maybe for somebody like Pacino,
Right.
it's just the beginning of...
It sparks a new quest.
Yeah, of a new quest.
Yeah.
And speaking of new beginnings, there's a pretty major shift in his personal life around this time.
Oh, okay.
The birth of his daughter, Julie Marie.
Ah.
And he talks about how fatherhood just completely changed his perspective on everything.
That makes sense.
And there's this really, really kind of heartbreaking story he tells about
Oh, what is it?
taking Julie out to dinner. And she ends up hiding under the table because people keep interrupting to talk to him, to get his autograph.
Right.
And this little girl, she just wants to have dinner with her dad.
Of course.
And it really made him realize, the impact of his fame
Yeah.
on the people closest to him.
On his family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talks about the importance of finding that balance
Right.
between his public life
Yeah.
and his private life.
Which is a struggle a lot of people can relate to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Even if it's not on that scale
Right.
of fame,
Yeah.
but just,
Managing those different roles.
yeah, all the different roles we play in our lives.
Right.
Right. And it's interesting because he also talks about how Julie actually ended up helping him with Scent of a Woman.
Right.
Yeah. Remember how he talks about learning to play blind
Oh, yeah.
for that role?
Right.
And he says that when Julie was little, she would close her eyes and walk around the house. Not pretending to be blind,
Right.
but really kind of experiencing the world in a different way.
Right.
And it was like this light bulb moment for him.
Wow.
He realized that's how I need to approach it. Not as a performance,
Not as a mimic.
but as a shift in perception.
Right. To actually experience the world differently.
Yeah. And it's beautiful, right?
Right.
This profound acting lesson coming
The
from
toddler.
this little kid under the table.
It just shows you the power of observation,
Yeah.
of being open to learning
Yeah.
from the most unexpected sources.
Yeah. And it seems like fatherhood really brought this whole new
Yeah.
dimension to his life,
Absolutely.
both personally and professionally.
Right. And you know that theme that keeps coming up
Yeah.
in the memoir, this idea that life is constantly evolving and we're evolving with it? It's not about
All right.
holding on to one specific moment,
Yeah.
but embracing the journey as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that has really struck me as we've been talking about Pacino's journey
Yeah.
is his constant drive to challenge himself.
Oh, absolutely.
He never seems content to just,
Right.
settle in.
Rest on his laurels.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could easily just kept playing those same kinds of roles
Right.
over and over.
Yeah, but
that's just not who he is.
no, he's a true artist. He's always searching, always growing.
And he even talks about how he
Yeah.
actually enjoyed some of the less successful films he made.
Really?
Yeah, he found ways to make them, in his words, not awful, but mediocre.
Wow.
Which I just think speaks volumes about his work ethic and his commitment to the craft.
Yeah.
He didn't shy away from challenges, even in projects that weren't guaranteed to be masterpieces.
Right.
He saw every experience as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah. And it leads us to his decision to direct Looking for Richard,
Oh, yeah.
his adaptation of Shakespeare's Richard III. It's like this project that's been kind of brewing in his mind
Right.
for years and years.
Yeah, and it's more than just a straightforward filming of the play.
Right. He calls it a great big collage.
A collage with
Right.
himself at the center.
Right.
Exploring, his own fascination with Richard III and weaving in these interviews with actors,
Yeah. Scholars.
scholars, people on the street.
He wanted to make Shakespeare
Yeah.
accessible.
To a wider audience.
Yeah, not intimidating.
To
Right.
everybody. And he wasn't afraid to experiment, to
Yeah.
break down those traditional barriers between art and the audience.
And the film really is this unique blend of performance and documentary and critical analysis. It's so cool. You're watching the play come together.
Right.
You're hearing different perspectives on the characters and the themes.
Right.
And you're seeing Pacino's own passion for Shakespeare just kind of
Shine through.
shine through.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that art can be engaging on so many different levels.
Yeah.
It can entertain.
Right.
It can educate.
Yeah.
It can spark these really deep conversations about ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah, and there's this really powerful moment in the film where Pacino's reflecting on the nature of acting.
Yeah.
And he talks about those times when you really connect with a character, when you transcend your own self and become someone else entirely.
He describes it almost as a spiritual experience, right?
Yeah.
A merging of identities.
You know, it really gets to the heart of what makes him
Right.
such a compelling actor.
Yeah, his ability to completely inhabit a role.
Right.
To make us believe that he's not Al Pacino anymore.
Yeah.
But the character he's portraying.
It's like he disappears.
Exactly. And it reminds us of the transformative power of art.
Right.
Its ability to connect us to something bigger than ourselves,
Yeah.
to help us understand experiences that we might not otherwise have access to.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Pacino's memoir, what are your big takeaways? What's resonated with you most?
You know, for me, it's his incredible dedication to his craft, his willingness to always push himself further, and his deep understanding of the power of acting. It's really inspiring to see someone so committed to their art, someone who never stops learning and growing.
Yeah, and for me, it's his honesty. He's so open about his struggles.
Yeah. His insecurities, his triumphs.
Yeah.
And it makes him feel, relatable, even though he's this iconic figure.
Right.
He reminds us that we're all on this journey.
Yeah.
And it's okay to embrace
Yeah.
the messiness of it all.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes his memoir so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just a story about fame and success.
Right.
It's a story about being human.
Yeah. And that's it for our deep dive into the world of Al Pacino.
Great conversation.
I hope you enjoyed exploring his life and reflections with us.
And remember, keep exploring, keep questioning,